Australia, a land of diverse and often extreme habitats. From wild open country to deep forests to grassy plains. Its vast expanses have produced an immense array of bird life and many species found nowhere else in the world. Waddling over the beaches of southern Australia is one of the country's most comical and charming creatures, the penguin. And this is the most delightful of them all, the little or fairy penguin. These are flightless, flippered birds who create some of the noisiest neighbourhoods in nature. Theirs is a family saga of faithful relationships, committed homemaking, and vigorous nightlife. This is the story of the little penguin. Phillip Island, an area of 40 square miles just off the coast of South Australia, not far from the large city of Melbourne. The waters of the Bass Strait beat the shores of this idyllic spot, bringing a source of rich nutrients and marine life. It's good fishing here, and it's an ideal home for many birds. The pied cormorant, the tern, and the oyster catcher all thrive in this island seclusion. Along these breezy, wave-brushed shores, there's also a different kind of bird. But this one flies through water rather than air. The little or fairy penguin, smallest of all the penguins. With an average height of 13 inches and weighing around 3 pounds, these silver-eyed little penguins are small but perfectly formed. A colony of up to 32,000 breeding pairs make their burrows on this small island in an area protected by government conservationists. Little penguins are diurnal. They spend most of their days fishing out at sea in the cool waters off the Bass Strait and only return to land at nightfall. They can stay out at sea for months at a time. But this penguin we've named Harry has just returned to the colony to wait for his mate. It's July, winter in Australia, and the start of penguin breeding season. Harry's just one of the thousands of penguins which make their burrows in the dunes around Summerlands Beach, known as Penguin Parade. It's here that they'll rest, breed, lay their eggs and raise chicks. Their burrows can be rocky shelters. Or tunnels the penguins dig to build nests under the dense vegetation. These burrows have been here for many generations, with penguins returning to the same colony to breed year after year. At this time, many penguins who've been away at sea for months come back to the colony to nest. The males often return first to get started on burrow renovations. Harry's got some burrow maintenance to do, so he can have things ready for when his mate, Sally, shows up. Sally may still be far away. Little penguins can travel up to 30 miles a day. Little penguins are suited to life on the ocean wave. To move through water 37 times denser than air, their wings have adapted to become strong, muscled flippers. Little penguins use their pectoral muscles to flap, generating forward thrust on both the up and down stroke. This gives the impression that they're flying underwater. But time at sea is fraught with potential dangers for these tiny birds. Somewhere out here is Sally. Although her blue-black feathers serve as camouflage while moving through water, she can easily be a prey item for larger birds. A white-bellied sea eagle can pick her off the water. She also has to contend with sharks, seals and sea lions that patrol the waters around southern Australia. Her white underbelly blends with the light when viewed from below, helping to obscure her from would-be predators. This little penguin is one of many that didn't make it. It's estimated that up to 20% die at sea each year. He may have been attacked by a predator or got caught up in fishing lines, an all too common occurrence. Oil spills can also kill many penguins. But little penguins don't only have to contend with marine threats. As soon as they return to land, feral dogs and cats, foxes and even snakes can attack. So they wait to return to shore under the cover of darkness when it's safest to come up the beach. As night falls at Summerland's beach, one by one, little figures quietly emerge from the waves. They prefer to return to the same landing site each time. But so do their enemies, the gulls. The gulls might not be predators, but they are incredible scavengers. They'll try to scare the penguins into dropping morsels of fish caught whilst at sea. The gulls gather on the shore in large numbers and place themselves between the penguins and their homes. Each night, gangs of gulls patrol the beach like thugs picking on the little guys, hoping to menace the penguins into giving up their dinner. So the little guys have their own strategy for avoiding trouble. Safety in numbers. While out at sea, they call to each other, trying to muster as large a group as possible, called a raft. But still they have to get their courage up, and it can take a long time. Once they have a big enough gang, they can muscle their way through the barrage of intimidating gulls and form a protective block. The first group makes it to safety. The next batch gathers, getting ready to run the gauntlet. But then, one member of the group loses his nerve, and the others scurry back into the water. They marshal their forces and try again. This time, there's strength in numbers. Waddling awkwardly on their hind legs can give the penguins' movement a comedic look. But researchers found that the waddle is actually the most effective way for them to move on land, as it raises their centre of mass and allows them to swing their bodies forward. This plucky penguin is not going to be bullied. He heads back down the beach to try and shepherd other penguins in. But they hurry past him and the gulls close in. Suddenly he's surrounded. As another batch makes it up the beach, he's left alone. He goes back to the relative safety of the water and waits for others to join him. But no one comes. The only thing he can do is make a run for it. Keeping his body low as a less conspicuous target, he runs as fast as his little legs can carry him towards the protective vegetation around the sand dunes. Once they're up from the beach, the penguins use the narrow pathways through the vegetation to make their way back to their burrows, calling to each other in greeting as they go. Harry waits eagerly for his mate. And there she is. Sally's made it back to the beach safely and is just one of many searching for friends and family. She could have as far as half a mile to travel along these labyrinthine tracks to get to her burrow, where she hopes Harry will be waiting. As well as calling, Sally looks for landmarks to guide her. It's most likely she uses visual cues to navigate, but it's unknown exactly how a little penguin's internal mapping system works. Finding a way through a maze of pathways seems harder for some than for others. At this time of year, with so many penguins coming home for breeding season, the colony is alive with chatter. Penguins en masse can be extremely noisy. They love to socialise and have up to 9 different calls, ranging from short barks and sharp snorting yelps when they're angry or disturbed. While penguins will swap burrows during the year, at breeding time, they like to return to their old nests, as well as their old mates. Sally has found Harry, and the pair are finally reunited. Little penguins have a high rate of mate fidelity and may stay together for life, especially if they're successful breeders. But they don't stay together out at sea, and there's no guarantee that couples like Harry and Sally will both make it back safely year after year. This male is renovating last year's burrow, using his powerful feet to dig. He wants to make sure everything's perfect for his mate upon her return. But it looks like he's left waiting. His partner hasn't appeared. She may have died at sea or been taken by a predator. Sometimes a male is unwilling to wait too long for his old mate. If he wants to have a chance of breeding this year, he'll have to attract another female. But for now, he stays faithful and waits. Little penguins prefer to swim in water temperatures no warmer than 40 degrees Fahrenheit. So they only live along the southern coastline of Australia and among the islands of New Zealand, where the seas are cooler. They also often choose to nest on offshore islands, where there are fewer land-based predators. So the island of Tasmania, the most southerly state in Australia, should be perfect little penguin habitat. There are fewer introduced species, such as foxes, to predate them here. But even in this idyllic location, the penguin population is threatened. Growing numbers of penguin-loving tourists can easily disturb their nests, and an increase in feral cats and dogs has affected their breeding numbers. On a beach not far from the state capital, Hobart, conservationists are attempting to reverse this decline. There's a tiny colony here made up of several breeding pairs, living in specially created burrows. The beach is kept free of dogs and feral cats in order to make a safe haven for the birds, and humans are discouraged from getting too close. The little penguins seem happy to adapt to life in the igloos placed on the hillside for them to breed in. This penguin has opted to spend the day resting in a drain pipe, which provides cave-like protection from the sun. Conservationists are hopeful that without intrusion, the penguins will be able to lay eggs and increase their numbers this year. Meanwhile, the population of little penguins on Phillip Island is now well protected from intruders. From the 1940s, over-enthusiastic visitors trampling on burrows and a surge in cats and dogs led to the penguins becoming endangered. So, during the 1980s, the government took radical steps. They introduced a penguin protection plan, then repossessed the land and demolished housing around Summerlands Beach. Since then, the landscape has been transformed and the penguin numbers have soared. The penguin population here is the largest in Australia. Breeding pairs like Harry and Sally can safely spend time together here. The pair has most likely had no contact during their time at sea, but now, as breeding season begins again, it's important for them to re-establish their special bond. They groom and preen each other. It helps them get rid of parasites they can't reach themselves and reinforces their bond. Little penguins are meticulous with their preening, which is essential for feather maintenance. They have around 10,000 feathers, 3 times more than many flying birds, which insulate them against chilly water. The base of each feather is soft and downy, trapping air and providing insulation underwater, while the tip is stiffer to prevent it being squashed by the water pressure. The penguins constantly push their beaks through the feathers to keep them coated with waterproof oil, which is secreted by a gland at the base of their spines. And mutual grooming is not only limited to partners, As Harry and Sally clean themselves up, other penguins step in to help with those hard-to-reach places in a social ritual known as allopreening. As the sun sets, Harry and Sally begin a nighttime serenade. They start their wooing by calling and then join in with each other's song. And then they dance. Waggle their flippers, dip their beaks, stamp on the spot and circle around. It's all part of their courtship. Noisy breeding couples up and down the colony follow suit. This song and dance is a prelude to the most important act of bond reinforcement, mating. For many animals, copulation is the work of seconds, but the little penguins get intimate for over 2 minutes. And they'll do this up to 30 times a night. Afterwards, Sally disappears into the burrow, while Harry stands guard outside. He'll do this to ward off other males who may want to steal his mate. But while some partners are getting reacquainted, others are left waiting. The single male penguin's mate hasn't appeared. He now faces a choice. If he wants to breed this year, he either needs to find a female penguin who's lost her partner, or try to persuade an already paired up female to leave her mate. This does sometimes happen. There's a separation rate between living partners of around 15%. Come nightfall, he's out looking for love. He tries his luck at a few burrows, but he has to be careful. Other males will defend their nests against would-be intruders. Wherever he goes, he can't seem to find a warm welcome. But he keeps going. He tries Harry and Sally's burrow. But Harry stands guard. Things quickly escalate. Harry brays angrily at the visitor and waves his flippers to tell him to go. The single male has to take a walk. The next night, Harry's busy. He pops out of his burrow in search of more nesting material. Over the days that follow mating, the couple collects material together, including grasses and bits of seaweed, to line the sides and bottom of the nest. They need to select the right bits of vegetation and can be picky. All over the colony, other little penguins work on their nests too. In Tasmania, the little penguin colony is growing. They've dragged twigs and vegetation inside their man-made burrows. And the conservation strategy is showing signs of paying off. This female has just produced a perfect clutch. It's roughly 2 weeks after mating, and she now has 2 eggs, which were laid 2 days apart. Now the hard work begins. The male and female will take turns to incubate the eggs. One will stay on the nest for up to 10 days at a time, while the other parent forages for both of them out at sea. Little penguins spend their time in the water trawling for small fish, such as anchovies, pilchards and sprats, in a series of shallow dives. They're well adapted for marine life. Their webbed feet, which give them good grip on uneven rocky land, also help them to steer in the water. Like some fish, little penguins' eyes have flattened corneas, so they can see clearly both under and above water. And they have excellent night vision. And the penguins have a neat way of getting rid of any excess salt from the seawater, which could be harmful to their health. They have supraorbital glands above their eyes, which sieve out any salty water they've ingested before it gets into their bloodstream, so it's safely excreted as brine to trickle down their beaks. The foraging penguin needs to find enough food for 2, which it will then regurgitate for the waiting partner. It's a stressful period. With all the risks of life out at sea, there's always a chance that one partner may not make it back. If this happens, the eggs may be abandoned. Back on Phillip Island, it's August, and Harry and Sally are also set to be parents. Sally's laid 2 eggs. She and Harry share sitting duty. There's no guarantee that both eggs will hatch. The success rate for hatching is only about 60%. They have more than a month to wait and see if both their chicks will emerge. As hatching time draws near, the couple need to time their foraging trips extremely carefully. If the eggs hatch while one parent is away fishing, the clock starts running on the chick's survival straight away. Penguins can spend several days at a time looking for food at sea. But if the hatchlings aren't fed within 3 days of emerging, they'll starve to death. So the foraging parent must return within a tight time frame. "36 days later, there's activity in Harry and Sally's burrow. From the noise level, it seems both chicks have made it, but their parents keep them hidden from view. This early stage is known as the guard period. While one parent stays to keep the chicks warm, the other fishes. While Sally keeps watch, Harry scurries off to get some food. Elsewhere in the colony, other baby penguins are starting to emerge from their burrows to take a first look at the world. Meanwhile, on the other side of the colony, the would-be Casanova has had a stroke of luck. After his long search, he's found a female of his own. The pair has settled down in a burrow and already has a couple of hungry chicks. After 5 weeks of being cared for in their burrow, Harry and Sally's 2 chicks finally emerge. They have soft, downy feathers that aren't yet waterproof enough for them to swim. They may waddle around a bit, but they are still entirely dependent on their parents for providing food. And the bigger the chicks, the more food they need. There's no time for babysitting. This level of feeding requires both parents to be out at sea full time. And they leave the chicks alone to wait for the next meal. With the hungry chicks needing food, it's even more important that the parents make it past the sea predators and the gulls to transport their cargo of fish home. Waiting alone at the nest, Harry and Sally's chicks are hungry and getting impatient. They keep a constant eye out for the arrival of their parents. Finally, Sally arrives at the beach alone. She doesn't have time to wait for the safety of the raft and strikes out on her own across the beach, a potentially risky strategy. She appears exhausted after a long day's fishing and can barely make it up the bank. The chicks are becoming increasingly agitated. They call to their mother. As she appears, they pounce on her in excitement. The baby penguins harass their mum to produce the goods by tickling her throat to stimulate regurgitation. Sally needs to take a break. Little penguins sporadically sleep in short bursts of around 4 minutes, known as micro-sleeps. They can even do this while at sea, floating on the surface of the ocean. Once the chicks are fed, she can grab a few minutes' rest. However wearing it is for Harry and Sally, they need to ensure that their chicks are as strong as possible by the time they leave the burrow. As they begin to make their own way in the world, the youngsters will be at their most vulnerable. Only 15% of hatchlings survive their first 2 years. Many are eaten by predators, but if their parents can't keep up the feeding, starvation can also kill them. Their chance of survival in their first year correlates with their body weight. The bigger they are, the lower their mortality rates while learning to fish at sea. After 8 to 10 weeks, the chicks will be as big as their parents, and they'll have to learn to fend for themselves. As soon as they have their waterproof feathers, they'll be out on their own. The chicks are getting older, and it's time for Sally to nudge them towards independence. This time, when she brings them their food, she doesn't approach the chicks too closely. Instead, she stands a little way off. They must come to her. By encouraging the chicks to walk further, they'll grow a little bit stronger every day. While little penguins face numerous hazards in raising their young, they have a secret weapon. Unlike most penguin species, a breeding pair of little penguins can raise more than one family a year. Once the first lot of chicks have gone, if it's early enough in the season and food is still plentiful, they can go on to breed again and raise a second set of chicks. It's February and Sally and Harry's chicks have departed. Now it's the parents' turn to head out to sea. They'll only have a few months to restore lost strength and fatten up in time for breeding again. Whether swimming in the cool ocean seas or battling up the beach at sundown, or living in a drain pipe, little penguins are vocal, sociable and determined. Skilled fishers, noisy singers and devoted parents. They're a charming feature of coastal life on the shores of South Australia.